Alright, we might have our first technological hiccup. I cannot hear your gameplay.
Oh no.
Yeah, I only pick it up when you personally make some sound.
That's a lot of berries.
Oh, so it's not...
You're quite
So
the
during a
gatherer,
cutscene, it's
aren't
not
you?
going to play the audio.
Now go and see if you can find
it's
some
not sharing
more.
your video audio on your...
Oh, it's not showing the video either.
No, I have video, but I just don't have the audio of the gameplay.
Okay.
Well done. That's a good.
I hope that changes after the cutscene.
Children, come with me.
We're hearing sort of
She's an outcast,
very light music.
to be shunned.
Oh, you have video and audio. Great.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thanks, chat.
There.
What are we noticing about the sort of initial framework? The new game feature
Come
jumps
on.
the big main sort of title sequence. But we're sort of thrown in with Aloy, a young girl who is a, quote, outcast, and being alienated from people of the Nora, quote, tribe, and experiencing this sort of alienation. What are we noticing about the sort of aesthetics? What do we think about that childhood? Yeah, really.
And this is something interesting to me because this is very much the children have to be taught this outsider behavior because here Aloy is as a young child making a clear connection with another child that
Down here!
wants to share some blueberries or make a friend, and they're pulled away from her before she's literally thrown into the subterranean.
Yeah, into the old metal world.
Okay.
I think, right, literal rage spiral is an apt metaphor. And, right, it's... I'm interested, Brittany, in that tension that you're pointing out, or that, like, subtext you're pointing out, which is, like, learned behavior versus what is natural, because I think this game wants us to put a little bit of pressure on nature versus, like, learned behavior. Because, right, like, she's trying to get the approval from the Nora mother.
Looks
Motherhood,
tight,
yeah, because
but I
the
can get
Nora are a matriarch.
Mm-hmm.
And just immediately we'll find out that Aloy
This
is
must be a
rejected as
ruin
an
of the
outsider
metal
into
world.
society because
One
they
of the
do
old
not know who
places.
her physical mother is. She just appears to them one day. So yes, this is our main character. She's going to age up, so we're experiencing her here as a child as she's discovering a gift from the past, as this chapter is called.
Ross said never go
Going
to
to
places
stumble
like
upon
this.
something magnificent.
But I
And I
have
do
to
want to
find a
point
way
out
out.
that this is a very beat for beat hero's journey story.
Oh, for sure, yes.
So young Aloy is getting her call to quest soon, and she is jumping ahead a little bit because she's going to get the weird technology boon that helps the hero on their journey at a very young age.
And I do think it's interesting, I think as Victoria's pointing to in chat, like, what feels maybe different or useful about sort of throwing us into this tech world as a young girl?
What's that?
Well, the game
Dead person.
is breaking a lot of stereotypes for us. So first of all, our society's based on a matriarchy.
Sure.
There's something shiny
So,
there.
and then we're getting a hero's journey, but we're getting it from a young female's perspective, something we just generally don't expect.
I mean, historically in gaming, not the thing, right?
Specifically historically in gaming. You know, females in games are usually the damsel in distress.
Sure.
And here, Aloy is the hero of her story.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we had these conversations on past streams. We had this conversation on Halloween, thinking about, right, like what it feels like to sort of, right, be a woman playing a sort of, right, female identified avatar, and how that feels. I don't know if you would like to share any of your sort of experience as, right, like, woman gamer person.
So getting to play as a female was always a challenge growing up because they just weren't offered to us. even
How
big
does he
title
do
games like
this?
The Legend of Zelda. Zelda is in the
Right.
title, and we don't get to play as Zelda for a very, very long time. And when we do get to play as Zelda, as soon as she turns back into Zelda, she's kidnapped and whisked away from us. So
Are
our
you talking about Wind
opportunities-
Waker?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
Our
Another door.
opportunities to get to
Closed.
play as an avatar that
Maybe this device I found
embodies
can
our
help.
identity is really, really rare.
A
So
shape.
it's fun to see Alloy.
It's connected to the door
and kind of,
somehow.
her hair is kind of pinned back out of her way, and just those little markers of some things you do as a kid.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see.
What gets me about the animation style is her hands when she stumbles or sort of runs fast. Like, her little arms are adorable, but they feel sort of like, I don't know, like they are trying to hit. It's an interesting coding of childhood.
It changed color.
Yeah, and it's still that nice exploratory nature of children, though, because
Sure.
as we get used to having technology in every aspects of our lives, we kind of expect the younger generation just to get it because they grew up with it. So it's that old joke, like, you have the kid set the VCR clock for you, and that might be way too dated as a reference. But
Door changed
No,
color
that-
too.
that's what we're seeing Alloy do. She's figuring out the super technological VCR time clock right now.
Right. And I'm interested in this idea, this fantasy of the primacy of sort of tech literacy, or fantasies of tech literacy for the younger generation, because this game imagines that, right, like this is for those of y'all who joined us with Tomb Raider, right, like this is our first tomb. This is supposed to be like the ancient old site of the quote metal world, and it feels like the future. So I think this game's sort of layering of temporality is interesting, and maybe
What's
putting a little
that?
bit of pressure, as Brittany's arguing, on sort of like
He's right behind you.
what feels natural about sort of tech.
Happy birthday, Isaac. Daddy sure does love his little big
I love
man.
this moment as Alloy is
Look,
experiencing
Daddy can't
her
be there with
first
you and Mom,
kind of,
but we can still have a
projection
party,
of a
right?
video.
Sure we can.
Kind of looks around. It's very foreign, but then she's sucked into it.
Yeah.
Show me. Show me again.
And
He's right behind you. Hi.
for a scene that is also, so I
Happy
guess my
birthday,
question
Isaac.
is, in chat, feel
Daddy
free to
sure
hop
does
in
love his
here.
little big man. Look,
How are
Daddy
we
can't be there with
positioned
you
to
and
the
Mom,
family?
but we can still have a party,
In a way,
right?
like part of the conceit
Sure
of
we
this
can.
prologue is that Aloy is sort of alienated from
Daddy sure does love his
a sort of
little big
community.
man.
But in both of these sort of cutscenes so far, we've seen sort of yearning for maternal recognition, and now this sort of hologram of paternity. How do we feel about the family?
So while we wait for some answers here,
Yeah.
we didn't get to watch the full video opening of this video game, but Alloy does have a father figure named Rouse, and he is a manly man who is put in charge into caring for Alloy, who too is also an outcast, and that's why she is given to him to be raised.
Can you believe we
So
Yeah.
Alloy is not
celebrated
without
last
complete
night?
family representation,
did.
but she is
Kind of.
very limited.
Director Evans invited everyone to gather in the community room.
And it's,
Don't know where she got the party hats. That was a
I think it's
ghoulish touch.
interesting that
So there
we
we sit
take,
watching the clock tick down to midnight, and I'm thinking, I saw them lining up.
I mean, that we take a we take a sort of single father motif for our hero's journey. If I'm being cranky, how does this? If I'm being cranky, is this just paternalism repackaged?
It really is. All these tropes are repackaged, and all they did was switch genders on us.
So one of the things that I think you started our conversation with is the sort of potential of sci-fi to show us alternatives to gender.
Why did they die here? What happened to them?
How does a sort of easy flipping the script, changing man for woman, boy for girl, work within that sort of sci-fi framework? or not work within that sci-fi framework.
He found me.
For this game
Ross found
particularly,
me.
I don't feel like it necessarily
here.
works.
I'm
Just
coming.
because it is
I'm
so
coming.
set in every single beat of the trope. Of instead of patriarchy, we have matriarchy. We have an outcast girl because we
Come,
don't
girl.
know
Take
her
my
mother,
hand.
whereas we would have had an outcast
You don't belong
boy
down
because
there.
we didn't know his
Come.
father. I'm not learning anything new from the experience other than the representation
Such
of
places
hey,
are
look,
forbidden,
it happens
Aloy.
to all of us.
I
We
fell
all
in.
have this
They are of the
grand
metal
potential
world.
for a journey,
Right.
which I appreciate.
Yeah,
What is
I
that
mean, if we're
on your face?
that bar is so
Okay.
low.
Yeah.
Did you find
I mean,
it
flipping
down
the
there?
binary doesn't get us out of the binary, right?
Give it to me.
Let's see. We have a comment saying
Aloy.
sad that we can only have that
Such things are
subverted gender
dangerous.
No!
in fantasy games.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, women's empowerment, women equality, that must be a fantasy. Yeah, that for a game that is speculative, right, sci-fi, it's not imagining,
If you're gonna
it's
go
imagining
sneaking
the
away
bare
from
minimum,
home,
right?
You'll need to know how to
The
survive in the
super
wild.
bare minimum. And the only
Come,
saving
Aloy.
grace here is that
Home
Aloy is
now.
never treated
Starting tomorrow,
necessarily as a child.
You'll learn to hunt.
Roust is raising her to survive in their environment.
Right.
So that's nice that we know that everyone's equally involved in their survival. This isn't a situation where she will be limited because of her gender.
Yeah, and right, the thing that we noticed in the beginning was Bast was like praised for his natural gathering. So in terms of right biological essentialism
Holy
of right
shit.
men are hunters, women are gatherers, this
do they
game
mean?
doesn't give us that, which is something.
Take your bow.
But again, it's this question of paternalism or sort of pedagogy and teaching
Oh?
that
Enough
maybe I'm
muttering to that
skeptical of,
plaything.
especially with this like low
descend
angle
to the
shot
valley now.
up at like Ross.
Follow.
How do we feel about this framework so far?
This was hard to like get into initially.
The wilds
for me,
can be dangerous,
because it
Aloy.
still felt like there was
You'll need to
a
stay close
limitation
and
of
do as I
being
say.
intimidated by the father figure.
I know.
Despite Aloy being a little
Now,
bit soft,
you're still scratched
and a
up
little
from
bit
that fall you
back-talking
took
and being
yesterday.
protective of
So
her
let's start there.
youth-focused
Take this medicine
technology.
pouch. I'll show you
It
how to
still
fill it.
felt very okay. Father figure
See
is
this
going to be
plant
a
over
little
here?
bit less firm with
It's
her.
called salverush. Come,
And,
gather its berries in your pouch.
Chat's pointing to a sort of flipping of
Good.
description
eat
in
the
terms of
berries.
taboo spaces. And that we have a very
They may taste bitter,
hyper-masculine
They
Ross,
can save your
coupled
life.
with Aloy, who's
Always
maybe a
keep your
little
pouch full of medicinal berries,
more
flowers,
gender non-specific.
and plants.
Where are we?
This valley
Yeah, and
is
I
just
think
a
I
part
agree with
of all
that
mothers
reading of
embrace.
Aloy, that she doesn't necessarily
The Nora
feel
tribe watches these
hurt
lands
at any
and
point.
keeps out the most
It's
dangerous
not
machines,
forced on us.
usually.
This isn't a character design that is ultra feminine from the get-go. She has some markers like skirts, but if you look at
Right.
Ross's clothing, you can see that kind of
It's
dangly
hides, yeah.
mistakeiness. It's high.
Further downriver, we'll find a
So
herd
yeah,
of
we're not
machines.
seeing the super
and I will
strict
teach you how to
gender
hunt.
applied
Are
to
they
her yet.
dangerous?
All machines are dangerous.
I love that you said yet.
Their power must be respected.
We'll get to that edit
will
or
be
that
beside
cutscene where she literally rolls into womanhood. Because I think that's just a fantastic
The
montage.
machine's coming.
If only it was
Crouch
that
and
easy.
follow me into the tall grass.
Yeah, and also Victoria's pointing to the
stay
ways
low.
that
No,
this is not
Aloy.
just a pedagogical moment on
Such
screen,
machines are
but it's
called
also
watchers.
sort of right
You must learn
teaching
to
us the
avoid
controls
their
as
gaze.
like
If you are to
players.
survive
So
in
like
the
we are
wilds,
also
I will show
coached
you.
along by Daddy
Listen
Ross,
close and do as I do. Stay
which
still.
is the moment.
Wait for it to pass.
Oh, here's our first look at one of the Watchers.
I love
keep
the
low.
feature design.
And follow me across the
It
trail
might
to
be
that
my
tall
age,
grass.
but I don't know if you remember in the original Teenage
another one.
Mutant Ninja
it
Turtles
pass.
game.
Yes.
The little, yeah,
Yes.
I feel terrible that I can't think of their names, but they stalked on 2 feet, and they did that kind of same raptory-like motion. That's
Yes.
all I see when I see these.
Come, back this way. The slower you move, the
I
quieter.
buy that. I like a little nostalgia.
Oh, I wish I could think of their name.
Wait for it.
The machines
The
look like
machines?
dinos, yes.
They kind of do look like dinosaurs, yeah. And at the beginning of the game, you know, it's a mystery to us as to why these machines are here. We just accept that they are part of our world,
That's the last of them.
and we've got to be
Let's
careful
move on.
around them.
Yeah. And, I mean, spoiler alert, we do find out that they are sort of holdovers from
You did well. They didn't see or
a
hear you.
corporate, privatized military
Now stay close. That herd
complex
should be just ahead.
that sort of thrived on disaster capitalism, so I think that's fascinating. But our initial orientation to the machines is very like, no, we're stealthing, we're crouching, we are oriented away from technology, or from like violent technology.
Who's that?
Ignore him.
But why's he up there?
And again, we're seeing Alloy having to be taught to be othered.
He's smiling at us.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's something that's useful, right? In terms of demythologizing what is
Ignore
natural about
We are outcasts, and he is of the tribe.
embodiment,
Maybe he doesn't like the
genders,
tribe.
identification.
And he is a fool. Come now, let's find that herd. Follow.
And now we get to learn about the nature of being a hero,
Right.
which is picking a lot of trees and flowers.
I mean, this game came out in 2017, so it
There.
has
See them?
that open world,
These are called striders.
like, feel, and just all of, like, the interactable environment stuff.
This world is very...
Why'd you chase them off?
I've been playing this game for a good month now.
Show
and
you
I
how some
cannot
machines
beat it
startle easily if
because
they
of the
detect
sheer
you
amount
and
of
run away.
content and side
They're
quests
best
you
approached
can
by
do in
stealth.
here.
Fair
And all
enough.
of it builds on the
We'll
story's
catch up with them
lore.
further down the
So
valley.
it's kind of
You'll
fun.
see.
There's these really cool moments that I appreciate, and it probably hints at the tribalism nature that
Now,
they
I want you to
inject into the
find some
story.
rocks that fit the
But
cup of your
you can
hand.
sit
Why?
down at
Do as I
campfires
say, Aloy,
or
and
in
gather
front
the
of
rocks.
stages and
I
listen
will show
to
you how to use them.
performances as they tell the
Those will do.
history of
Follow.
their world.
Right. It's got, I
So-
mean, yeah, the lore making is rich here.
You
Were you
can
responding
get
to
as
Dr.
much as you
Sorensen?
want from it. I am going to. Let's see. Dr. Jenny is asking, how and why do you get marked as an outcast here? So for Alloy specifically, hers is a little bit different than other outcasts. It is kind of it's
Aloy,
a form of shame.
over here.
But for Alloy specifically, she is outcast by the
There's
Nora
their herd.
tribe because she
All right.
does not have
It's
a
time to throw
mother.
some rocks.
But rocks can't hurt
They're
machines,
just
right?
subverting the
No,
gender trope
but they can
of
distract
the
them,
outcast
draw them into
male
traps.
protagonist
Like
for
that
not having
watcher
a
over
father.
there. It must be dealt with. Or
And
we'll warn
so
the herd
Alloy's
and send them
hero's
running
journey
before we get in
is
range.
about identity,
Warn
finding out
how?
who she is and where she
The
comes
machines speak to each other, Aloy. Unless they are first
And
silenced.
it's
Now
and
you
to
stay here on the
recuperate
ridge.
specifically it
On my
describes
signal,
like,
throw
oh,
rocks and draw the watcher over to
can
me.
I find out maybe like who is
Wait
my
for my
mother,
signal.
or what is my connection to maternity or motherhood, or like Mother Earth. This area is called Mother's Embrace. So this recurring sort of Earth
Aloy,
Mother
I told you
Gaia
to stay
moment.
put.
Like
You'll have to try again.
It's a lot.
It is a bold move by a society run by mothers, but that's the point about the trope switch here on the gender, is we would expected this totally from the patriarchy, so it
Aloy,
feels like we're
throw a rock near
shortchanged
me.
that this was as creative in the storytelling as they got.
Right.
They gave us the same
Aloy,
trope with
throw a rock near me.
female instead of male. We appreciate the female, but you're reinforcing the exact same problems by doing the exact same thing.
The problem with binary. And this is where I think the cyborg potential, the sci-fi potential sort of falls apart a little bit.
There.
That
Come, girl, it's safe now.
one of the things that Donna Haraway, vintage, socialist, feminist, theorist in A Manifesto for Cyborgs, right, is that the cyborg potential is all about rejecting wholeness,
Harvest a
wholeness
kill
and
so I can teach you how to make arrows.
a sort of return to Garden
Good.
of Eden type
Now,
vibe.
gather stalks of ridgewood from the plants over there.
But this game seems predicated on that, based on, I think, as you're noting, right, archetypal reinforcing.
Use the stalks as arrow shafts, and metal shards for arrowheads.
Particularly do not like that Rouse is raising her
Good.
and make the
You'll
point
never
of
run
calling
out of
her
arrows
girl
if you know how to
Yeah.
craft
when
what
he's
you need.
calling.
Let's
got
put
away
those
with it
arrows
with
to
God of
use.
War.
Follow.
That
Yeah,
became
yes.
This doesn't work.
Yeah, in terms of, like, aggressive,
Here. Stay low on the grass.
it feels aggressive and a
be
little
quiet.
diminutive, right?
Especially because she's getting ready to take down her first dinosaur.
Yes.
It's time to make your first kill, Aloy. Strider, one of the weaker machines. But even a
Brittany
weak
brought up,
machine
right,
can
like,
kill a
the
hunter
way that this
if she's careless.
injects
You
a
must
sort of
study.
consideration, or at
Its
least a
hide
sort
is
of
thick, but
veneer
there are
of,
spots where it is vulnerable, like its eye.
sort of
Can you guess another?
indigenous aesthetics, or indigenous sort of, like, what this game at least imagines is like a return to a sort of past.
The canister on its back. Is that a weakness?
How successful
Yes.
is that?
How
Also,
did you
chat,
guess
if you
that?
want to weigh in about the
device.
sort of
It showed me.
vibes that is sort of
plaything?
giving.
Stop playing games. Now,
So we
take
should
down
also
that
point out,
strider.
and it's difficult because we
Target
can
the
only
eye
get so far
or
in
the
the
canister.
story.
Again!
But we will discover that there are other tribes with their own styling, own beliefs and value systems. And Alloy is exploring these worlds and learning how to
You did well
interact
today,
with different tribes.
but you have
as she
much
comes
to
across
learn.
them.
Tomorrow,
her status as an
we train
outsider
again.
doesn't exist
What
in
was
these
that?
other tribes.
Right.
which
That
is
boy!
interesting.
The one
that
running
they
the brave
stick around
trails.
when they could have gone
Follow Aloy, quick!
to be part of another society, but don't. But the other nations they're coded still for warring against each other, and I think that's such a shame. But the assumption is just that that if we have these groups, they're just going to fight no matter what, and have that tension at any given time.
And I will say the Karja sort of aesthetic feels not Edward Said Orientalism, right? A mad Sun King of the East. It does not. Well, it's not a great optic.
No, and especially because that area is Utah. That is
That-
United States Utah.
I mean,
and
yes.
building off of some horrible war tribe stereotypes. And you can't miss the coding of that in this one.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate because I think this game relies on our understanding of very, like, oh, I recognize Utah, but not right like Utah before it was Utah. That the sort of multi-layered post-apocalypse actually contributes to sort of indigenous erasure as it relies on these types of sort of stereotypes, aesthetics, etc. Like it's a real unfortunate use
But I
of
can
like
see the path
speculative
they
fiction
take.
in the genre.
Stop telling stories.
Yeah.
It took me a while to
I'm not. I can
accept
sneak
that
through.
this was set in the United
will
States
not.
when I first started playing it, until you start seeing things like Denver Stadium.
Yes,
of course,
yeah.
they're all torn apart. You have to really pay attention to recreating solvent landmarks. They're places I've been to.
Right.
But yeah, knowing that they're still building on some of these like regional stereotypes we have, how do those stereotypes exist in a fallen society? Because spoilers, everyone, all of technology is gone. Our history is gone. We don't have anything other than like artifacts.
We need
Right.
to do this slowly
There's
and
no
quiet.
books.
Yeah, and I think the thing that Dr. Sorensen's hitting on in chat about Ross trying to like impede the progress doesn't not feel gendered, right? That like maybe if we're being as generous as possible with the specs, it could be about calling out that type of paternalistic, I don't know, control as like not productive, not moving a story forward.
Right, there isn't time for Alloy to play and explore.
Right.
Other than when she just happens to take off on her own or is accidentally thrust somewhere. And she's chastised for falling into that cave cavern.
Mm-hmm. Right.
How dare you fall into a cave? As one just does willy-nilly fall into caves.
We don't play down there.
Oh no.
I see you're a much
The
better
witches
player
saw
than
me.
I was. I just ignored the fact that I could distract them and didn't.
Oh, I mean, it did not work out at all. I just got
No,
impatient.
The nice thing is they don't show us the deaths in
There
her
we
as
are.
a child.
Yes, yeah.
I appreciate that they give us that little bit of distance, because when we see Alloy die as an adult figure, it's a little gruesome.
Yeah, the violence is sort of amplified there.
Right, you can't see the value that the new tech, as Dr. Dennis mentioned. And, you know, it says something about this age difference we have between adult and children, where we don't necessarily recognize that what we think are things of play can be really beneficial to our learning. So until he sees a true value for this, he's going to reject it.
We need to see their paths.
And right now, Alloy's just being amazing using this technology that he just doesn't understand.
Right.
But I do want to point out that there's
Almost
something specific that Ralph doesn't do, which I feel is important for this story, is that he doesn't take away her technology. He seems it's a toy, but he never takes it away from her. He
Goes
tries
for it, yeah.
He does.
And again, unintentionally sort of disarming her here.
There he is.
By taking away the bow. And I don't know, as a player, right, like, I feel particularly vulnerable, I feel helpless, right, like, the stealth mission of it all.
Follow me.
And again, relying in, like, complete reversal of little girl saves young boy. Right.
And that he willingly trusts her because he's aware that she is an outcast. And it's very troubling that the outcasts, despite not having any visual markers that note that they are outcasts, they make it a point in their society that you know that they are, that if you see them, you recognize them, and despite them not having a marker, you know that's an outcast person you're not supposed to interact with. Yes, I love the inversion of damsel in distress. Alloy is never in distress.
Thank you, Wormtown. But that it does feel, I'm a big fan, that, yeah, now it's a flipping of the actual mechanics, right? To re-script the idea of leadership and following.
This is where their reversal works.
I would agree, right? There's something about this game, and we're about to go to, like, training montage and all of that, that still, like, feels like it should work, or that it feels empowering in some sort of way, or it feels like, oh yeah, badass. But I wonder...
It is no plaything.
I wonder how deep or real those feelings are.
That line read is so good. It's no plaything.
Wait.
It's no plaything.
Oh, mother bless that girl.
So he does
Bless you
now
both.
recognize the value, which is nice.
Boy!
He could have gone in to save her, and he lets her have
I just
her
wanna-
moment to
Yeah.
explore.
Seal your lips!
They are outcasts, both.
Here we have those reinforcing of othering.
Is motherless.
In like a really hyper-aggressive way, right? It's like, all mother, thank you.
Come now.
All mother, thank you, right?
Back to mother's
like,
heart.
Yeah.
Oof. Great. We can
Come back
imagine the
to mother's
matriarchy. Yeah. I mean, okay.
Boy should
If
not
I'm
have
being
spoken to us.
cranky, it
It's against
reminds
tribal
me
law.
of just like the worst version of second wave,
We'll go home now.
like
Follow.
radical cultural feminism a la Mary Daly and
I know the
hashtag Guy in
way.
ecology. Like I'm skeptical, right, of the way that this text sort of centers images of maternity or motherhood, but also, right, like to what effect and in what, in service of what is what I'll ask.
This is good writing here. Alloy muttering
away,
the
mother.
negative things that she heard as she's kind of emotionally dealing with it. Oh, this is where we get our first decision making.
And just, I mean, maybe we should pull chat. We've got some time. Are we going to drop the rock and be kind, knock the rock from his hands and be clever, or are we aiming for his head?
And I mean, feel emotional as you want in this moment, because this little boy just gave her a scar.
Yes. Throwing rocks at children, that is what we are thinking about today. What are we doing? Aiming for some head, dropping the rock, knocking the rock, being clever. Insight?
Okay. I personally chose the clever thing,
head.
but I love the tenacity of off with the head. 'Cause
Yeah. All right, we are going to knock the rock from his hands, but in our hearts, we're aiming for the head.
Right. And this is an important moment too, as a player, because we're choosing our own mapping of Alloy.
Yeah.
These moments don't affect the game. These are purely for the player, for their own relationship with the character. Not to be a jerk, but for
Hold still.
Right.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
Why am I
You talked
an
about the good
outcast?
writing, because I do think this is a really well-designed,
Who was my
well-produced,
mother?
clearly very
Lloyd,
expensive
I told you
sort of
before,
game, right? Guerrilla
that's not for
Studios
us to know.
hired
You were just a newborn when the
anthropologists
matriarchs
to
brought
like
you to
think
me.
about what Denver
So
would
the
look like
matriarchs,
as
they
it
know?
is deteriorating.
It's not so simple.
And this is also a
they
sort
know.
of game that
Hey, Lloyd,
casts Ashley Birch,
we are
whom I love as a
outcasts.
voice
So
actress.
how do I make them
there's this
tell
lovely
me?
The matriarchs?
interview with
There
her
is a
that
way,
says every game
perhaps.
So
that I'm
tell
cast
me.
in is a risk.
It would be dangerous.
How?
And I think,
It would take years of training.
I don't care.
yeah,
How do
Victoria,
I do it?
I think you're right.
Tell me.
The proving.
That
The tribe's
there
rite
is
of
a sort
passage
of
held every year.
eroticism or voyeurism
Those who
of indigenous
pass
culture.
become
That it
braves.
is the
But to the
veneer
one
of
who
such
wins,
that allows us
the
to sort of
matriarchs
write like
grant a boon.
Boo?
Yes.
that
Whatever
allows
the
us
winner
to sort of
wants.
write like say, oh, it looks
I'll
and
do it.
feels like indigeneity, but the entire concept
Whatever
is
it
still
takes.
one of right like colonialism,
the
settler
proof.
colonialism.
I
Right,
see.
right, because we're going to find out pretty quickly
We
that
best get started.
there's going to be an attack on the
Training
Nora.
will be hard.
And it's all about that
It'll
power
take
dynamic
years.
grab.
Start training.
So they're
Yes.
still mapping these
Follow.
ideas over
Right.
their science fiction.
That's the thing. Yes, Brittany. Like it's like cool. I'm playing a sci-fi game. I expect it to be sort of right, imagining otherwise. But if you import your colonial mindset about what indigeneity feels like, and also sort of right like settler colonial ideas of gender binaries, violence, etc., right? Like that doesn't fix the thing, and then you've just wasted the sci-fi of it all.
This is the fun montage we spoke about earlier, where we
This
get
is
to
a
watch
fun
Alloy
montage.
grow as a warrior, or as a Nora brave.
As a, yeah, and that's, I think, to Victoria's point, the co-opting of the language of right Nora braves still feels uncomfortable.
the weapons of choice are also coded in that game.
Yeah.
A spear, her bow and arrow, she'll ride horse-like creatures later.
And they frame it, the game's language is, the game does not use in any way, shape, or form, except for, right, these sort of terms, brave, tribe, right? Like, that's there. And then in, like, the loading sequences, oh, here we go, roll into womanhood. Bam.
I remember when I had to do this.
Right. Yeah, this is what puberty is, right? Yes. Climbing, scaling, highly physical. But the game frames it as primitive, right? Like, oh, after society crumbled, we are back to primitive culture. And like that reductive framework, like, seems like the misstep of this game.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that we have a wonderful exploring people here that just totally lay to rest everything that's left behind. They make it a forbidden place for them to be in. And I can understand it from a survivalist point of, we don't understand it, that's scary. But somebody's always going to go out to try and understand it. And we'll get there in the game eventually. But it's weird to me that it takes so long before that exploring happens.
Right. Yeah, that I think the pacing of the game, the use of this as prologue, both and pedagogy, right, both for Aloy and ourselves as players, feels limiting, or sort of reductive for a game that on the surface should feel more radical based on, right, like, we are playing as an action hero woman.
And I guess the only thing that I can appreciate about this little bit of downplaying of not making Aloy seem super fantastic despite the fact that she is that this is cultural for them. It is everyone's responsibility to help each other, to build... Yay, you got to level 3.
He said we go hunting this morning.
Those levels are a big deal.
Why isn't he here?
Those levels are a
Where's he gone to?
But that we get to learn culturally for them that it's very important that everyone learns some basic survival skills.
What's he doing up there?
They're not just banking on Ralph to take care of her and protect her, and that she couldn't do anything on her own.
I mean, that there's something useful in sort of scripting,
you're here.
Right, like coding capability into sort of, right, all characters.
We have another decision moment.
Are we going to be sensitive with our patriarch? Are we going to be a little more aggressive, clever? What do we think, chat?
Is everything okay?
Yeah. I care.
Did you want to be alone?
No.
I don't know. I'm pretty excited to go make my trial run.
I've been thinking about your training, Aloy.
Yes.
You've learned to hunt, learned to survive.
And again, those moments there in
lesson
decision-making are just strictly for us as the player.
Would you learn it
They
now?
don't affect the game.
Of course.
It's not like
I'll always learn what you have to
Heavy
teach.
Rain
There
or
has been
anything
some
where your
trouble
decisions shape
recently.
your storyline.
It affords
It's
an
just how
opportunity to learn this
you-
lesson, but it will be
You
dangerous.
project onto
You must come
Aloy.
prepared, or you will die.
I mean, you've mentioned this.
Descend into the embrace.
You've mentioned this
and
in a
hunt
previous
until you've gathered
conversation
the
between
parts
us.
for fire arrows.
But
Fire
how do-
arrows? What kind of trouble are we talking about?
Once you
what
have the
is-
parts,
what is
you
your
will meet me
relationship? What is
there,
our
at the
relationship
gate
with
beyond the
Aloy
village of Mother's
versus,
Heart.
for instance, on past
The North
streams,
Gate?
Lara Croft,
At the edge of the embrace?
Jill Valentine.
Now be on your way.
Like, what's... How do we feel about the sort of coding and the sort of gendering and the sort of relationship between player avatar, spectator avatar?
Is something else
So I
bothering
actually
you?
spent a lot of time
No,
thinking about
I'm
this
fine.
because of some other things I'm interested in and other stories
Yeah.
where
Are you worrying about
in
what
science
happens?
fiction, And in video games especially,
What happens is
our
clear.
protagonist is a big
You will be
deal.
accepted as one of the
I
tribe,
think it's
and I will
funny that
still be an outcast.
it's a useful
shunned.
catchphrase to say that you're the main
Rost,
character.
even if the tribe accepts
sure,
me,
sure.
I won't.
There is much
of
to
the
do,
story.
Aloy. We will
But
discuss
there's
this
something
later.
really refreshing about the fact that
Okay.
Aloy isn't necessarily this poster woman
Anything else you want me to do while I'm down in the
of
embrace?
video game. You know, she's on the
Odd
cover of
Grata
the
might
game,
be out of food
but
by now.
the
You could
cover
hunt a
is
week's
more
worth of
about
meat
the
for her,
world
if you find the
she's
time.
in.
Wouldn't mind
So
if she'd say thanks just once.
I feel detached from
Grata
Aloy
follows
because I
the
don't,
law.
you know,
Her science
yeah, I
towards us
want
is
to be
honorable.
that fun,
None of
strong
Mm-hmm.
girl
If
that
you say
can
so.
knock a million arrows and take down dinosaurs.
I'll
But
go
I
gather the
appreciate
parts,
that
but
Aloy
I'm also going to pay Karst a
has
visit.
a little bit
Aloy,
dampness
that
of a
man
vibe.
breaks the law every time he speaks to
You know,
you.
maybe we shouldn't relate to her.
And I'm glad he
because
does.
this
I
isn't-
want to buy a
this isn't
tripcaster,
something any
and
of us
no
should
other
have to
trader
do.
will sell to outcasts.
Yeah,
Stock
that,
it with ammunition, then.
the unfairness
I
of being
don't
an
feel like
outcast.
Use for that weapon tonight.
Yeah, I don't feel attached to the violence,
sounds
and I don't
ominous.
feel like
All right.
Aloy's
See you at the
use
North Gate.
of strength is particularly violent.
I mean, it's
Which is
not,
something
right?
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
Something's
very
really
much,
bothering him.
when I first
If
played
he
this, I
thinks I'm
went
gonna
into
bother
it
him, he's
thinking
wrong.
like, oh, is this like a first-person survival? Is this something that like, what is my relationship to that violence? And it's not that, right? It is parts stealth, and there are ways that it doesn't feel, I think, as aggressive for a game about like fighting lots of tech dinos.
Right, this game relies a lot more on the cleverness aspect of having to stay stealthy, because when you aggro
The embrace.
a huge swarm of
My whole life
dinosaurs,
I've never
Oh,
gone
yes.
it's
this
as
far.
fun as it sounds.
Yeah.
That'll change after the proving.
Which is pulse pounding
2
terrors,
days.
and now I'm going to like
2 days until
mash
I
the
get
dodge
answers.
button until I can get
2
all the way
days,
away.
and I'll know who she was.
L3
Why I was
circle
cast out.
until
Right.
you're out of
Yes.
As if there could be an excuse for
range
that.
of the
All
aggro.
right. Time to gather the
But
parts
yeah,
for some
and there's a
fire
lot
arrows.
of there's a
should
lot
find
of
a herd.
collecting in this game.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Winter's hard.
resource availability too.
2 more days.
You're
and I'll
never
know what it's
without,
like
and
in
I
there.
think that kind of reinforced
So
that
many
Mother
people crammed
Earth
into one
image
place.
they go for that.
I guess
Right.
no one
love
ever
the
gets
land.
lonely in there.
Yeah, we are playing in Mother's Embrace right now. Work with the earth. Well, which feels like a useful sort of imagery. I keep saying useful. I feel like it feels like a important counterpoint to the destruction underneath, right? That we will later come to learn is caused by sort of capitalist, imperialist, global exploitation. That what this game maybe can imagine is a different relationship to resource. I'm so
You
sorry.
said that so casually, as if, you know, capitalist downfall of society. Like, yeah, we just accept that.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm anticipating. What are you anticipating? Oh no, oh no.
Oh, maybe I should. As a sci-fi person, I should anticipate that.
I mean, that's what COVID-19 is going to give us, right? An escape or an overthrow, a collapse. Is that real?
We'll see. Probably are seeing.
Sound off in chat if you want to overthrow capitalist, imperialist agendas.
Let's just kill some dinosaurs.
Fair enough.
You're not. Go for a kill.
We're gonna-
No, show us those alloy kills. Plus, you've already activated their attention.
Now they're
I
hunting
was hoping
me.
for stealth. This is fine.
It's not going to get close to that. Just one good.
Stealth kill.
Yeah, there we go. You get more points for your stealthiness in the game, and I think that's important to mention. You get more experience points for your use of environment and your
Right.
cleverness. And
More than
not
equipped to take
necessarily
you on.
just
Oh no.
That's the thing. I don't know about you as far as gameplay goes, but Aloy's melee attacks are very slow.
Yes.
And so again, the game really is kind of forcing you into being clever and intentional about every choice you make.
I mean, I agree. Yeah, that and it takes so long to actually make melee useful in this game. So the stealthing in the shadows, being very intentional, being rewarded for a very different type of gameplay. That's fun. Does that feel gendered at all?
Oh, I think it does. I would agree with that. Because as far as I go as a gamer, I am very much a run into the fray, forget
Yes,
that I have
fair.
a shield button option. And this is one of those games where I have to remind myself, slow down, you're going to get killed.
Right, yeah.
And the load time on this game is ridiculous, so you don't want to get killed and have to wait for your game to reload.
Agreed.
Let's see, is there any sort of society amongst the machines, or are they all more like herd animals? They are like herd animals, and that's a really interesting part of this game, is because, you know, we talked about the cyborg dynamic earlier.
Yes.
And there's who coded these creatures to do these things. And then we're going to find out later that something's also corrupting the machines and changing, and then we end up having control over them at one point, where we learn how to override them to our advantage, so we can master them. The machines don't attack each other. They're not antagonistic with each other. They don't seem to have their own animal survival hierarchy. And that's something I think sci-fi-y about this game that they do really well, where animals, machine animals, only act so much to expect, and then they don't.
And in fact, this game can imagine a lot of sort of symbiosis between machines, right? The Watchers are here looking out for the Striders that this feels, oh, I'm going to get surrounded and it's not going to be cute. But again, this is sort of a Haraway vision of a blurring of the boundaries between animal and machine. But it's still... Oh, I did not think I was going to get that. It still sort of relies on, like, domination or overpowering in some cases.
Yeah, especially when you get to the bigger creatures don't necessarily attack you, but you have to gain control of them to gain control of the areas. And there is this hierarchy on both sides. They are a little bit cooperative with one another.
I've completely mucked this up.
Yeah, we don't want those lines. Oh.
Right.
And, you know, there's some campiness to this gameplay that I really like in open world games like Breath of the Wild, Zelda, where you can literally just jump up any mountain and smash the button enough. Alloy can do that too.
Yeah, in ways that feel like much more like Skyrim, because it's like, oh, I should not have been able to jump up that mountain, but I understand that this is going to... I understand that I can. Only there's no slingshot, or not slingshot, hang glider, a la Breath of the Wild.
A hang glider was very useful.
Right?
And actually, that feels like such a limitation that Alloy doesn't get any flight capabilities, given that we later have flying dinosaurs.
And we can override Glinthawks. Like, there is a thing, but they just fight for you. I'm very upset that I don't get to fly on a dinosaur.
Why else do we want flying dinosaurs?
Right? Thank you.
That's maybe something about the humanity aspect, if we're stereotyping the human experience to how we know it, that they definitely miss it.
Get it while I can.
We want to fly, and they don't let us do it.
Yeah, I think we have a Horizon Zero Dawn 2, sort of in the future.
Yeah, so it's just announced a couple of weeks ago. So the other thing to mention about these machines is that we can loot from them after we can knock off supplies that are useful to us. We craft ammunition.
yeah, that everything sort of feels right, like
Keep quiet.
it all goes to resource management, or it asks us to think about our relationship to these machines, the environment, as a relationship to resource.
And the usefulness of them.
Yeah, I was not going to say usefulness because I've said usefulness too much, but thank you for saying usefulness.
I can take it. I can take
Yeah,
it.
thanks. I want to do the mission for the cranky old woman.
Oh. Oh man, that's like 2 weeks ago in my memory.
Huh. Errands.
Is it not?
This is what I want.
There we go.
I mean, the open world is just brilliant.
Can you zoom out so we can see how large
yeah.
that map is?
There's just, again, as Brittany, you were saying, there's just so much content in this game that it feels like there's just so much to see, do, craft, hunt for. It's quite expansive.
The next game is called The Forbidden West.
Mm-hmm.
Because this, like, the area we're technically in right now is Colorado. And then we move over into Utah.
Handy.
Which, again, are very real sites of violence, right? Like settler colonial violence. Denver.
Oh, and I'm sad that most of your map isn't visible yet, because if you pay attention to the map, you can see machines on the map that were clearly part of the big overtaking. Why society no longer exists. There's that massive.
Yeah.
You have to spin them to... No, it's not like Breath of the Wild where you have to make food. It's nowhere we get to see the feed on screen. That's a good point.
That's fascinating.
Oh, I hadn't really thought about that. No,